The Sean Green Show. Sean covers all things entertainment. Movies, books, news, concerts, television, video games. The entertainment guru. Sean covers it all. This is the Sean Green Show podcast. The Sean Green Show podcast on WGN Plus and SeanGreenShow.com.
This is Mason Paine filling in for Sean Green. Sean is taking a well-deserved vacation and will be back in the driver's seat next week. Joining me today to explain how to properly prepare yourself is survivalist author and blogger Patty Hahne. Thank you for joining me, Patty.
I really appreciate this opportunity, Mason. It's going to be fun to talk and to share some ideas.
Could you tell me a little bit about your experience in prepping?
Well, sure. The reason I kind of got started in it, I'll just give you a little brief intro there, is many years ago, we left Utah and we ended up buying property and living off the grid for almost 9 years here in Oregon. And so it wasn't so much as thinking, hey, I think I'm going to become a prepper. It was more we had to learn as we went because we lived off the grid, because we didn't have electricity. We had to learn how to use generators. We had to also learn by trial and error which generators, because a lot of times people think, man, I've got to have the biggest thing, because if I have all this power, man, I'm going to be able to do everything. Well, we quickly learned that, yeah, you can do everything, including break the bank if you're using it all the time because of gas. So we just kind of had to learn the different things we needed to do to be able to live up there. I know what generators to get, batteries to get, just what to do to live, not to be a prepper at that time, but just to live.
Was it?
And
I'm sorry. Was it just you and your husband, or did you have children at this time?
We have children. My older kids used to say, "Thank God you guys went through this later in life."
Oh, okay.
We had two small children with us, still elementary age.
Oh, wow.
And they thought at first that this was just a great adventure. We're moving out here, and we had lived in Utah. We'd seen snow. Well, we weren't prepared. And we got a lot of snow that first winter. So my husband and I just, again, trial and error, had to learn how to do things. And then we had to learn how to put water lines in to get water to our house. I mean, when I say we were off the grid, we were totally off the grid. So we just had to learn these things. And then the prepping part came by saying, you know what, we live 35 miles from town. So when we went to town, we decided, you know what, we need to make a plan. We need to think things through. What do we need? And if we needed supplies, if we needed things, we just got extra to make sure that we had it. And the same thing with screws and nuts and bolts and everything. We would just buy extras because that running back and forth to town got spendy. And so we just started stockpiling a little bit of this and a little bit of that to be able to run outside if something broke and hopefully have what we need there, or learn by studying and by reading the things that we might need to know how to do for ourselves because we were that far out. And then we actually got snowed in, and we had neighbors that they were snowed in and they were diabetics, and you couldn't get the sheriffs, you couldn't get anybody in. And so my husband had to get on a mule, which is our Molly mule, and he had to ride. It was several hours up into the mountains through the snow to get food that we had packed because we did have some supplies. And so we took them up there. He took them up there so that we could help them out. And they were there until they could finally get out and get to the hospital because they were both diabetics. And so that was kind of our intro into, you know what, we never know what's going to happen, so we need to be better prepared up here, especially having two children. Uh-huh. And so that's how we ended up thinking, you know what, being prepared is not just something that, well, we'll do one day. It's something that we had to start doing right away.
Have you ever heard of the game Oregon Trail? Because that's what it sounds like.
Yes, I did. And you know what it was? It was an experience that was, it really taught us a lot about ourselves. It taught us a lot about how much we waste, how much we take for granted. Because let me tell you, every drop of water, we didn't have a well. We had to get water, and then we thought, okay, we can just use this we had a smaller tank. It was 400. We could do that. And then we soon realized, you know what, we needed more. So we ended up getting a big, I think it was 1,500, I believe it was between 1,000 and 1,500 And we had that for gallons of water, and we got where we would go get it, and we started stockpiling our water. And we just learned that, every drop of that water is precious, and we need to know what to do, how to preserve it. We also need to realize that when you do get snowed in or whatever disaster could happen in our society, as well as I do. I mean, we have hurricanes. Hurricane Katrina, was a big wake-up call for people. We have earthquakes. We have all kinds of things that happen. And so a lot of times people hear prepping and they think, oh, they're waiting for the world to end. What I like to think is I'm trying to prepare for a time when something could happen, and it doesn't have to be the end of the world. It can be any of these things, and it was kind of like what we did when we first just moved there, like you said, Oregon Trails. We had to learn to be prepared so that we would have water, so that we could have food up there, so that we could take care of our family just to live. And then as we got more and more into things and realizing, what? We've all been told, we should all have 72-hour kits. We should all have certain things. So that's kind of a starting point, is people, I hope, will not look at preppers as, oh, my gosh, they're a bunch of wackos. That they'll think, what? All they are people just like me that realize that something can happen. We don't know what. Just be prepared for that, so that you can take care of your children, like we had the two small children there. And that's my message, is I hope that people realize and think of us as other people. And like I say, in everything in the world, there's always extremes. People go to extremes in everything. But I like to think of myself as someone who's just being prepared to take care of my family so that when something happens, I don't have to think, oh, my gosh, am I going to be able to feed them? Are we going to be warm? Are we going to have shelter? Things like that.
I'm prepping has always been an interest for me, especially recently. But my thing has been, like, when I go and look up, okay, what should I prep for? Like my 72-hour kit, what should I put in it? And there are a lot of sites out there that'll be like, oh, you need to have this in there for an earthquake. And another site will say, hey, you need to have something for a hurricane. And it's completely different from the earthquake kit. So my thing is how do you prepare, and for what? And realistically, like, what should you prepare for?
That is really a good question. And let me start by saying everybody lives in different areas. Some people live in the city. Excuse me. Some people live like we do. We live out in the middle of, a very rural area up in the forest. So the first thing I would say is people need to be prepared for where they are. So no one can be prepared for every event. And people that tell you, oh, you need to be prepared for the hurricane, for the earthquake, for, whatever happens. That's true in a sense. But what you need to do for the 72-hour kit, in my opinion, now this is only Patty talking, is you need to think, okay, the essentials. What do I really know that I'm going to need, And so as a beginning prepper to prepare, I think I would realize that, one, having a stockpile of things is important, but you need to have what I call a bug-out bag, your 72-hour kit. You can't prepare and think, oh, I'm going to have everything I need, because you would never be ready. You just need basics, the basic things. And what are some of our basic things? We need food. We need water. We need medical supplies, because you don't know. I mean, you don't know if you're going to, something could happen, and if you don't have any medical supplies, then you could be in trouble. You also need to realize that each of what I call my bug-out bags, okay, and that is, and it can be what anybody wants to make it, but for us, we have our bug-out bags, which are like backpacks, and we do different sizes based upon the size of the family member, but in them, we each have the things that, okay, we need some water, and if you have little kids, understand that you're going to have to do some of this. You're going to have to carry the extra water or whatever. But you need to have food and water and medical supplies. You need to have some clothing. You don't know. You may start off in the daytime, and if you had to leave your area, you would have to have this bug-out bag. So have something ready so if you had to leave. But in your home, you just need to have water. You need to have the food. You need to have medical supplies. And in our case, my husband's diabetic. And so we also have to have the things that he needs. other people are going to have medical needs that, that I don't have. So I think each person has to go, okay, for myself, what are the very basics, the important things? And food and water is very important. And then the medical supplies, and then whatever each individual in your family may need. So, in my case, like I said, my husband's diabetic, so we have to make sure that he has that. And that's what I would start with. Now, you can have more than that. Here's the thing. People think 72 hours, this is all I'm going to need. I'm just going to need enough to last. But we don't know. In Katrina, think about that. Here's these people sitting on a rooftop, and they didn't know when anybody was coming. And so what I like to do, for me, again, in my family, is I always like to think more is better. And the reason I say that is because 3 days come, and you're still in this crisis. You still don't have water. You still don't have electricity. You don't have certain things. Well, now my food's gone because all I planned for was those 3 days. So I like to think, okay, you know what? I'm going to the store. I'm buying something. I'm going to have a little extra. I'm going to put that back. And so by doing one thing at a time, a little bit at a time, all of a sudden you realize, you know what? I've got a case of this food. I've got extra water. I've got more than I need in this area. This is cool. So this is my stockpile that I'm starting. I'm going to continue to add to it. And the same with my water and things like that.